Hey, welcome to week 16 of the course, the final week. It's May 2nd when you should be. This has been available since midnight last night. What do I want to say? Week 16 of the course, it's the last week. Congratulations if you made it this far. If you're still enrolled in the course, you're going to get a grade. So we need to talk. If you're way behind in the course, you have until my grades are due. Let me make sure that I had this correctly. I think my grades are due on May 18th. You'll notice that I've opened up both, it's May 2nd, I've opened up both week 16 and the finals week. So all assignments that will be due for the class are now made available. You're going to have some film to watch. You need to finish up reading Simon Ortiz's From Sand Creek. You also need to watch Sherman Alexi's Smoke Signals. You may also choose, there's another film there, The Business of Fancy Dancing, that's up in week 16. You might want to take a look at that film if you want to. You'll need to compare and contrast. You'll see for week 16 what I have to say about Alexi. Sherman Alexi, I'm sure, he's one of the most popular American Indian writers, I think, writing today. His book, Lone Ranger and Tonto Fistfight in Heaven, the autobiography of a part-time Indian, the true story, whatever, autobiography of a part-time Indian, and other works of poetry. He's probably the most widely read young adult author and author that's out there. He's also been criticized somewhat, I would say, especially his early writings, and also by critics within the field for how do I say this? He presents a representation of the reservation space as one that is sort of like existing in sort of a moral decrepitude, maybe. People have criticized him for only presenting a very static view of reservation communities. And that's not to deny, I don't take a particular opinion of the lecture. You'll notice that I didn't assign any of his work here for us over the course of the semester, and I do that because I think a lot of people have probably heard of him and already read him. I do it also for another reason, and this is, in my experience, when people read Alexi, they zero in on native alcoholism. They zero in on alcohol and drug addiction in the reservation space. And it's difficult for me, I think, and it's difficult for the class to ever sort of move beyond that representation, especially if we read like Alexi early on within a semester. I often find it difficult for people who haven't read a lot of Native literature to ever sort of get past this idea of Native communities being overrun and rampant places of alcohol and drug abuse. And this is not just, and it's difficult for me to ever get past that. So I tend just to not do it. And I do that because for another very specific reason, I think that many people, not all, but a significant number, that representation of Native communities is so predominant in popular culture that it seems unnecessary to introduce it to a class on literature. That is the most prevalent, I think, representation of tribal communities that exist. And it's simply not true. And it's certainly not the only side of the story. And I think that we can get at many of these issues as you would have gotten through Simon Ortiz's From Sand Creek. You could have gotten to these issues even from Love Medicine. You could have seen some of these issues arising from Fullscrow, right? But we certainly see, to back up, I guess, back into Fullscrow, because I could talk about that book forever, I guess. Fullscrow gets drunk, right? Fullscrow goes out, goes into battle, gets drunk, wakes up the next morning with a terrible hangover and says, shit, and says, oh, damn, I got drunk last night, I boasted, I screwed up. Right, made a mistake. He doesn't get up the next morning and devolve into alcoholism, right? He actually, says, okay, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that again. Certainly that's not the ceremonial practice that I want to engage in, and he moves on with his life. Fast Horse, in other words, though, and those in Fast Horse band don't make that decision. They continue to get drunk and everything else, and make bad decisions. All cultures do this, right? So when we back up with Alexia, I just think that people, and it's not, and I ask you to sort of look at some of that criticism. I don't ask you to read at it, but I do introduce it into some of your answers that you'll sort of have to do. So what I'm asking us to sort of do is to look at sort of an aesthetics of trauma, right? Like a traumatic comedy in both poetry and film. And so I want you to see how Alexei uses humor, and Alexei sort of tries to resurrect. I think that he tries to resurrect. He answers his critics with the film Smoke Signals. And so I want you to take a look at that this week as you're sort of reading through and taking a look at the film. You'll also have a final that's due. And your final is really sort of open-ended. I give you, a couple of a longer documentary, about a 45-minute documentary, Indigenous in the City, that's set in Canada, but I think it's appropriate for a U.S. American Indian lit course, and sort of representations of how I think at this point in time 60% of the population of American Indian populations now reside in, within urban areas. So characters like Albertine. That we saw when that album came out, when that novel came out in 1984, the character of Albertine Johnson, who's sort of our narrator of the film, who sort of resides in Minneapolis and moves back and forth between the two spaces, between Turtle Mountain and Fargo, and Turtle Mountain and Minneapolis. We see that she more and more of the native population is moving in that direction, moving off tribal-based communities. Not to say that they lose that connection to tribal homelands, because that connection today is just as strong now as it's ever been. Only that the stereotype that native communities are these barren, sort of isolated, existence, and that's the only existence for native folks, is simply not true. So you'll need to look at Indigenous in the City, The Eighth Fire. Take a look at that documentary. I've also included a couple of humorous videos from a comedy troupe called 1491 that may help you in answering your question. And the question is very broad and very open-ended. If you have, and you can write about it in any sort of expressive means that you feel most comfortable in. You can write me an argumentative essay. You could write a piece of autobiography. You could write fictional autobiography. You could write a piece of fiction. You could write, you could do an artwork, you could shoot a film, you can do anything you want to sort of express your answer, to represent your answer in some way. If you have any questions at all about how you can answer the question, or the modes by which you may use to answer the question, your modes of expression, please reach out, send me an email, and I'll be happy to sort of answer any of your questions in that regard. Basically, any questions that you have between now and the end of the semester, I will be available. I'll be in town until I leave town early in the morning on May 12th. I'll be gone. My daughter's graduating from college out in Portland, Oregon, in the city in which she was born. And so I'll be moving back. I'll be traveling out to Oregon on May 12th, and I'll be gone and I'll be out of town until the time your grades are due. But don't worry, I will certainly be checking in. I will have internet access, and I will be checking in and grading your papers, and available to answer any of your questions as I have been throughout the semester. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Other than that, I will certainly come back. I will drop in next week and make it yet another announcement for the finals week, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, and answer any of your questions, anything that I see may be coming up. And I'll certainly be around to make one more final announcement by the end of the semester. But all your work's laid out there for you to do. You simply need to get to work and get it done. All right, that's it. It is a beautiful day here on Monday morning. So, we'll talk to you next week. Yeah, wash.